Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
So Saurabh used to always tell me that this film is about the end of innocence. It's that you fall in love very innocently. You fall in love and you realize that this doesn't exist at all. You know how quickly you become so cynical, so skeptical about it, and you become so bitter about it. So yeah, it's the film. That's where the dark humor stems from.
If you asked me to pick the very best Manoj Bajpayee performance from the actor's long storied career, I would pick his achingly beautiful and thoroughly moving performance in Hansal Mehta's Aligarh. Perhaps many of you would go with the same performance too. But did you know that another of Bajpayee's top performances can be found in another Hansal Mehta film? This is Himanshu, and you're listening to the Love of Cinema podcast. The film I'm referring to, of course, is Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar. It also stars Tabu, Saurabh Shukla, and Aditya Srivastava. It's one of my favorite films of last 25 years. Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, unfortunately, cannot be found on any streaming platform. There is a bootleg copy on YouTube, but save that if you didn't catch the film during the theatrical run, or unless you're lucky to own it on physical media. One of the best Hindi black comedies is pretty much inaccessible. An absolute pity. But hold that thought for a minute. Let me ask you this. Have you watched an high-on-technique action drama centered around an undercover cop and a gangster, where K.K. Menon, who played the cop, was projected as an Indian version of the honorable tough guy characters that Hong Kong star Chow Yun-fat played in some of his hit action films of the late 80s and 90s. Films like Ringo Lam's City on Fire or John Woo's Hard Boiled. Chances are, just like Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, you haven't watched Hansal Mehta's Chhal either. Again, simply because, save a ragtag copy on YouTube, Chhal is nowhere to be found on the streaming platforms. Now before moving on, an important friendly reminder. If you enjoy organic conversations centered on Indian cinema, Love of Cinema podcast was created for people just like you. So if you find value in the podcast, if it helps you in discovering new films or new facets about familiar films, do consider supporting the show. Love of Cinema podcast is my passion project. And with every episode, I've attempted to create something that cinephiles will continue to find value, not just today, but over time as well. To create something that goes beyond banter, beyond trending films. So if you find value in the conversations on the pod, please do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content with shelf life for fans of Indian cinema everywhere. You'll find a link to support the show in the show notes. You can also support the show directly from the pod website. It's fast, it's easy, and your support is greatly appreciated. Independent pods like this one don't have a platform for amplification and distribution. Independent pods rely on amplification through its listeners. So if you like the episode, please share the episode on social media, as that will help other people discover the podcast. Hansal Mehta needs no introduction. Hansal is one of our best storytellers today who has been bringing us great stories. Stories that need to be told. Stories that are vital to our times, but also stories that make for a compelling watch. Hansal joined us on the episode today to talk about a couple of his early films. Films that I really wish more people would watch. Not because I like them, but because both these films have a lot to offer for its viewers. Both Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar and Chhal did not fare too well at the box office. But if you ask me, it surely wasn't for not delivering the goods. And I really hope this podcast episode, in its small way, helps cinephiles in discovering two good films Two films that deserve more love. I was delighted to host Hansal on the pod for a chat on the two films. We talked for almost 2 hours, touching on everything, including essence of the films, working with Tabu and Manoj Bajpayee, the numerous first-time appearances in Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, including that of actors like Nawaz and Gajraj Rao, the craft and technique behind Chhal, and the excellent editing in Chhal by Apurva Asrani. Hansal also shared some wild and interesting anecdotes. For example, I learned that the cool title sequence of Chhal was designed by Rahi Anil Burve, the guy who made Tumbad. And now, Hansal Mehta on Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar and Chhal. Here goes. Hey Hansal, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
Great, great. Thanks a lot for coming on the podcast and chatting with us today. Today, we are going to be talking about technically your first two films, though I know that you did make a TV movie before Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar. But I just wanted to go back to that time and talk about those two films, which I watched. I was in college back then, and I really
Right.
loved those two films. And I just think that a lot of people, especially some of the younger folks, haven't seen those two films. And, I thought that maybe this is a good chance to chat about those films and kind of pick your brain on those two films. So, Ansel, let me just correct me if I'm wrong, but you did make a TV movie before Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, right?
Well, I won't call it a TV film. It was a film. It was a feature film, and it did not get released. And it was part of the Indian Panorama in 1999. It was called Jayate, but it was not a TV film. Technically, that was my first feature film. It was my debut. It was written incidentally by Anurag Kashyap.
Right.
So that's a film that I shot in 1996, I think. I've even forgotten the date, but I think 96 or so. I'd shot the film. So it was written by Anurag, and yeah, that was technically my first film, but the film never got released. It's an unreleased film. So that first commercially released film was Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar
Right. Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, I believe, released in 2000, right?
in the year 2000, October 2000, first week of October 2000. Yeah.
Right. Right. But is it true that the film was developed a few years before, around the time that Gulshan Kumar was murdered?
Yeah, the idea came from that. It was, this idea was developed while Satya was being shot. It was a thought that I had in my head about who is the guy who could have pulled the trigger. And is he really connected? Because there were articles that I was reading which spoke about how uh, the guy who pulled the trigger on Gulshanji was paid some 5,000 rupees. So that sort of triggered of this sort of exploration within me. That who is this guy? Why would he take a life for 5,000 rupees? That desperation was the theme that sort of got to me. And that exploration into these people, was he so marginalized that 5,000 rupees meant so much, and yet a human life meant so little to him? So it started with that idea, and and multiple ideas. I mean, that idea has become relevant today, where this whole voyeurism, where there was, again, this is something I had seen on the news, some international news item, where a couple was making out and shooting a makeout video, and somewhere behind them there was a plane crash. Very accidentally, they captured the plane crash. Now that footage they actually sold. They made money out of that footage. So again, that it sort of triggered this, that what if this guy pulls the trigger and somebody else shot it and tried to make money out of it. And today, I mean, today news has become that. Uh, so yeah, but that idea sort of got triggered from there. And then I narrated the idea. I just, one drunken night, I gave the idea to Manoj and Anurag actually. Anurag, me, and Manoj were drinking at Manoj's house. I gave the rough idea and I gave each of them one rupee as signing amount, and then nothing happened actually. Uh, you know, then Satya happened. Anurag got very busy writing other films for Ramu, and Manoj also started getting busy. And in the meanwhile, what had happened is I met Saurabh, Saurabh Shukla. I used to meet him at Anurag's place, but I got to work with Saurabh on a short film for ZTV called Air Mote. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, so that short film, in fact, it's part of a series called Rishte, and it's there. It's available on YouTube. So it was a lovely, sweet little short film. So Saurabh acted as in the titular role. Saurabh was going through his own crisis. There was some uh, professional crisis that he was going through at that time. He was quite uh, disturbed by that crisis, and he was shooting with me. And we had a long day of shoot. We had some 24, 26 hours of continuous shooting. So we had to meet the schedule. So in that, to keep him occupied, to keep him awake, I narrated this idea again to him. And he heard it and he said, "Look, I'll write this for you, but on one condition, that I get to play the video, the guy who shoots the video."
Right.
I said, "Done. Yeah, this is done." So, in fact, within 15 days, Saurabh started writing. He made one basic, step outline of the script. He told me, he gave me, and it was really good. He had written the first 15 scenes, I think. And he gave me the idea, the characters started developing. We went back to Manoj with that. Told him that, look, Saurabh is writing now, and this is the whole idea. Manoj, by then, there was a market that Manoj had developed. So Manoj uh, just told me that, we should make the film a bit bigger than the way you are seeing it. I initially saw it as a very indie film. I wanted to shoot it. See, at that time, 35 was the commonly used format. 16 was the format that people used to shoot on when they did not have money, because we did not have digital, scanning. We did not have DI. Negative, a 16 negative was blown up to a 35 negative, and it used to look pretty shabby. So I had thought of shooting on 16 and keeping it that making that shabby style a look. But Manoj was totally against it. He said, no, don't do that. We make it bigger, make it bigger. Now I have a market, and so we sort of went into a rethink on the film, and there was also money available in the market to make the film. So basically, me and two other friends got together, raised some money, and started the film.
Yeah, and it's interesting since you mentioned Satya, because there are a lot of parallels and contrasts with Satya in both the films. To be honest, Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar as well as Chhal, and we'll talk about Chhal later on. Possibly, it's because of Saurabh Shukla, who obviously also co-wrote Satya. Uh,
The funny thing, I must tell you a small anecdote about Satya and Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar. So Ramu saw Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, and the film got completed. I went out. I was very keen to know. There were lots of people in that preview. There was Ramu, there was Sudhir Bhai, there was Bonnie Kapoor, there was Sri Devi ji. There was a whole lot of people who had come to watch the film. It was quite overwhelming for me actually to see so many people. I think Sriram Raghavan was also there in that preview. So I went to Ramu to ask him how he liked the film. So he gave me a very weird answer. So he said, what I did in one reel, you have taken 11 reels to do. That this whole thing about Satya becoming a gangster, it happens in one reel. He says you have taken 11 reels to do that. So that was all Ramu told me, and then he went away. And I did not know what to make out of that, but I accepted it with all humility. I had no other choice at that time. I mean, that was one parallel that Ramu himself drew to the two films, but there was no intentional parallel.
Right, right. And the two stories are fairly different. I mean, they diverge after a point.
Yeah, I was also, this was primarily intended to be a film with a lot of dark humor. So there element of humor, but there's a darkness. It was a film about betrayal. It was about human nature. All these themes of gangsterism, of murder, those uh, were more towards exploring human nature and its lowest depths. And that was what, and that was the script that Saurabh wrote. I mean, on hindsight, I can tell you that I think the film was around, I would say, 50%, 50 to 60% of what Saurabh really wrote. We diluted some of the things by adding songs. We had 5 songs in the film, and I think it diluted uh, the film.
And that was
In a
because of commercial pressure, sir.
Yeah. So there was also so I had two partners in the film, and two opposite extremes, very close friends, and so everybody together. I mean, had calculations, and there was an expectation that this will be another Satya. So everybody who used to work with Manoj at that time wanted him to sort of replicate that Satya success, and they wanted me also as a director to replicate that success. And that was the big uh, failing, and it's continued. I mean, you take an actor, everybody wants you to repeat that actor's image. So I resisted it a lot, but in the bargain, in that resistance, I like certain elements I had to give in. Like, okay, so it started with one song, then it became 2 songs, and then it became three, because there was one song. So somebody else wanted a song which was a little more romantic. So I somehow had to force fit all those songs. I mean, the songs were interesting, and they were done in a, they still sort of fitted in thematically with the film. Like, we didn't, uh, but they were unnecessary. They were unnecessary in the overall narrative as I see it now. I mean, they're very interestingly done songs. Like there was a romantic song which after a lot of the script was written, the film was uh, nearly shot, and suddenly there was this whole conversation that happened, behind closed doors. Okay, there needs to be little more. You need to amp up the romance element between Manoj and Tabu. Now I said, you know, it's a very unlikely romance. There's no romance. So how do I amp it up? And then how do I show a song? I don't want to go into a fantasy song that he goes into a complete fantasy and romances. I did not want to get into that. So but I had to do fantasy if I had to show them romancing. So, Abbas Tayarwala was writing the lyrics for the film. So Abbas came up with a song. So the good thing was I had a script writer writing lyrics. So Abbas actually with the lyrics actually dictated the situation. Where you have a guy imagining his life, you have the woman imagining her life with the man. The man and the woman as husband and wife, they're imagining their life as husband and wife. And both of them are imagining it in different ways. Like he sees her sort of adopting to his very gharelu, small town kind of household, and he's trying to be very liberal with her, and she wants to be like the shy, coy housewife. It was like that kind of a fantasy. So it was a funny song. I mean, it was the lyrics were like something like G G G, sunti ho kya ji,
Right, right.
So he tells her G G G, sunti ho kya ji. So she says A G O G, kya मैं जी, something like that. तुम्हें मुन्ने की अम्मा बुलाऊं, तुम्हें पिंकी के पापा बुलाऊं, बोलो ना.
Right.
That kind of a thing. So it was very funny. It was luckily that song, because there was a script writer writing the song, and there was a to be born filmmaker composing the music, Vishal Bhardwaj. Somehow, on each song we got saved. And incidentally, this was also Remo D'Souza's first film as a
Yes,
choreographer.
yes, yes. Lot of first appearances, at least, and we will talk about that. But just before we move on from the music, now that you tell me that the music was an afterthought, given that it's still a solid soundtrack. I mean, I love the songs.
Yeah, yeah. The songs are very good. The songs were very, very good. That's what ultimately they came together, but I still feel that they were excessive. So the one song that was there is when the first time Manoj meets Tabu, when she comes to his garage, and the song is that Papa Papagal, Are Pagal. So that song was written by Piyush Mishra, incidentally. So that was the only song that Piyush Mishra wrote, and he wrote a 6.5 minute song. So shooting it was a nightmare. Shooting it was a real nightmare. But yeah, that was the only song which we sort of managed to fit in the narrative initially. But as we kept shooting, one song started getting added. So when we had built a set of a basti where Manoj lives, where Saurabh lives, so since we had built a set, we said, maybe we can have a song here. So that song Chal Padi happened. So Chal Padi was intended to be something like Sapne Mein Milti Hai. So that's what people were expecting from me and Vishal. But luckily, we did something else. You know, the songs by themselves, I think, are very underrated, and you know,
Definitely, yeah.
and very in they've been forgotten, very unfairly forgotten. But they were, I think, really, really solid tracks. Even the title track, it was very, very cool. It had
Oh
that
yeah, that's
very,
my favorite. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah, Mar Jayega. It did very well at that time. I mean, Kashmira Shah made quite a killing performing that after for quite a few years. But it was again very, very cool. Asha Bhosle with that attitude. In fact, I remember Vishal was very mad with me when the songs. So basically, Vishal had composed the song, and he had the programmers in the room. The song was being arranged by this guy called Tushar, who's the guitar player, Tushar Parte. So Tushar was arranging the song, and I think Salim Merchant was on the keyboard, and there were the rhythm guy. They were all there in the room. Bharat Soda was on rhythm, I think. So they were all in the room. So Vishal had set some rhythm pattern, and he said, "Ki baki." He told me, "Hansal, tu kar le. I'll come back and listen to it." You know. So you guys, you decide how what kind of treatment you want to give it. Now, while working on it, I suddenly had this thought that why not try the whole this disco style. So initially when Vishal heard it, he was very pissed off that the treatment, because the song could have gone anywhere. The tune was so strong, it could have gone anywhere. So of course Vishal came, tweaked the rhythm and all that. But initially he was very pissed off about the whole disco treatment. But थोड़ा सुनने के बाद, after Asha ji sang it and all, then मतलब he sort of tweaked the treatment that way, and gave it this really great rhythm and all, and the song actually mm, got a entirely new life. So I mean, I very vaguely remember all this. about that song. But yeah, I do remember initially when Vishal heard the first arrangement, he got very pissed off. And yeah, I remember he's such a dear friend. He got pissed off. Then he said, "Kya re, nahi, it was because he might have imagined something else, and he had already briefed those guys. So a little bit of the brief was breached. Uh, so then he sort of sat with them, cooled down, sat with them, reworked things, and but I think it was quite a cult number. Even the lyrics,
Oh,
we
yes,
came at a
yes.
time, yeah, when you are sort of trying to understand the state of mind of the character, and in that state of mind, these lyrics, they become this uh, sort of call of, they're almost like a call to morality. They're a call to, what are you thinking? Just go, fuck it, do it.
And
You know?
Hansel, this movie is also, so many first time. I don't know if I should call them debuts, but at least I spotted Nawaz and Gajraj Rao for the
Yeah,
first time in this movie.
yeah,
And this is, like a few years ago when I was watching this film. So back then, I didn't even know who these guys were because all of these guys, I came to know through Black Friday, which came,
yeah, yeah,
I think, 3 years later.
yeah,
But
yeah,
and even you have done a cameo on the cell phone. So
yeah, 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 yeah.
also probably your
Man
debut.
on the cell phone. My name, my name in the title comes as Man on the cell phone,
Right. Right.
and on IMDb also, Man on the cell phone. Yeah, no, no, that was again. I mean, Nawaz. I also did not know who Nawaz was. Manoj actually got Nawaz. A lot of the actors. See, at that time we did not have casting directors. There was only one casting director who was working then, but he was doing very little work and doing mostly working for Hollywood productions. That was Tigmanshu Dhulia.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Okay. I didn't
Yeah,
know that Tigmanchu was
he
doing okay.
yeah. I mean, Bandit Queen's casting
Yes,
was done
yes.
by
I know
Tig.
he did that. Right, right.
So he was doing a lot of that international casting and all, but we never even thought of getting a casting director for the films. We used to do the casting on our own. So the casting was like a joint effort. And so Manoj introduced me to quite a. He said, why don't you get Nawaz? Gajraj I had heard of, and he was, we had so many again, Manoj, Ashish Vidyarthi, all common friends. So Gajraj, we called Gajraj, he just landed up. And that's how they got Piyush also, Piyush Mishra. So it was Piyush Mishra's first film song. That Pagal song was Piyush Mishra's first film song. The first song that he ever wrote for a film. Uh, again, that also Piyush Mishra, they called from Delhi to Bombay to write that song. There was also, there are many others. I mean, there was Gopal Dutt.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
So Gopal Dutt is also there in the film.
Right, right, right,
Uh,
right.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Divya Jagdale was there.
Yes, yes.
Uh, you know,
Kaitonde's wife.
so
Right.
Gaitonde's wife, she was phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, lot of first timers. Even Abbas Tayarwala's technically his first released film as a lyricist. He had done a film before that with Jeet and Preetham, with Preetham, uh, Jeet Ganguly and Preetham. They were a pair that time. So he had done a film with
Yes,
them,
yes.
but the film with Sanjay Gadvi. But that film never got released. They had not been released until then. So then Sanjay Kapoor, the cinematographer, his first film. So Sanjay Kapoor after that went on to shoot quite a few films. In fact, he shoots this thing now, Mirzapur, Inside Edge, Mirzapur.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Uh,
Interesting that you brought up Mirzapur because I wanted to talk about the character of Ram Charan. And
right.
he hails from Jaunpur, which is part of Eastern UP. And I remember reading an interview with the showrunner for Mirzapur, Punit Krishna, where he mentioned that there is a strand of bravado and confrontational tendencies that runs through the people from that part of UP. When I watched Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, again for this podcast, I could see the gradual, transition of Ram Charan's character from a person who plays by the book to a person who's anything but that. And without giving away too much for the people who haven't seen the film yet. But I thought that was very interesting characterization of Ram Charan.
Yeah, I mean that I think the credit goes to Saurabh and also to Manoj. Saurabh for the way he actually built that character. So in my head, yes, of course he was innocent, and he was somebody who gradually becomes this person because of an event in his life. But I think what Saurabh gave him was that uh, there's a certain vulnerability which he felt was exploited. His naivety, vulnerability. We always say that there's this rustic innocence that the person has. Now, this film, so Saurabh used to always tell me that this film is about the end of innocence. It's that you fall in love very innocently. You fall in love and you realize that this doesn't exist at all. You know how quickly you become so cynical, so skeptical about it, and you become so bitter about it. So yeah, it's the film. That's where the dark humor stemmed from. That it just kept getting progressively darker and darker, and
Absolutely.
funnier and funnier, and
Yes,
getting
yes.
funnier and funnier. As it gets darker, it actually gets funnier.
It is a black comedy, yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hansel, I especially like those two scenes, while we are talking about Ram Charan, is where, he's writing those letters to his parents, in his head. First, when he finds a job, he writes to his father and says that, explain to mom what the meaning of the word settle is. And then sometime later, when he writes to his mother, when he wants to inform his parents about the girl in his life, and he asks his mom to share the news with his dad because he's too shy to share this news with his dad.
Yeah,
And again,
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
was such a lovely touch, that it gives you insight into this, nice person that he is at that point in time.
Those letters actually were an afterthought. Uh,
Okay,
yeah, so they did. So we had already made a cut of the film, and Manoj got Apurva Asrani to cut the trailer of the film. Apurva had done Satya with Manoj earlier. So Apurva came for the trailer, and in the trailer, Apurva hit upon this idea of a letter that Ramsaran writes to his parents.
I
He
see.
watched the film and he came up with this idea of the letter. And we sort of took that idea from Apurva's idea and sort of put it in the film. That's how, that's how Apurva became my collaborator on the next film I made.
Yes, yes, and he plays a part in the next film as well.
Yes.
Yes, yes. And one of the reasons why I love Dil Pe Matliyar so much is that trajectory of Ram Charan, and its unpredictability. We, the audience, go from cheering for this guy and rooting for him to fearing the worst for him at one point of time, and then being completely blindsided by the culmination of that trajectory, which was very unpredictable for that time. And I think that's where it kind of differs so much from Satya. I mean, even in Satya, you don't see it coming, but you kind of know that this is not going to end well.
Yeah, these are very different films. And, this film, see, all those twists that you see is because you are trying to explore how you're exploring betrayal, end of innocence and betrayal. So the betrayal just keeps, the number of betrayals just keep piling up. At every stage, every person you meet is betraying somebody. You know, the wife, Saurabh's wife is betraying him for his best friend. The best friend is betraying his friend. Saurabh is betraying Manoj. The footage that he sold to that person of the murder is the person who has called for the murder of his own brother. So it's so, cyclic that all those people. So that there was a poster of Dil Pe Mat Laya where there's this whirlpool. All three people in that whirlpool. So it's that, betrayal. It's like a whirlpool. It's a spiral. It's just spiraling. So it's spiraling downwards. In that downward spiral, those twists actually become, just keep going on and on and on. So that plotting, is like very. I'm telling you, it was a very refined piece of writing, and I think it's a film that mm, uh, needs to be restored properly.
Yes, yes. I was going to say that, Hansel. We got to get this on some streaming platform. I mean, that's the only way people
Yeah,
can
it needs to
enjoy it
it needs to
fully.
be restored first. It needs to be restored. I've been talking to Film Heritage Foundation,
Okay.
to Shivendra, about, the negative is with one of the partners. He, I think, has an unrealistic financial expectation currently. Uh, but I have told him that at least let us restore the film. Uh, as and when it's sold, you'll know the reality of its financial value. But let's keep the film restored,
Right.
so that, when the time comes, it's in good state. It's in a good state. So I don't know. Right, it's 23 years. I don't know the state of the negative, of the it's film negative. It was the first film in India that used something called the bleach bypass process. You know, and so the bleach bypass process basically involves the retention of silver on film negative. See, so in the shadow areas, different, silver nitrate would get retained. So the film would pass through various levels of bleach. So depending on the density of the shadows, the silver nitrate layer used to be mm, formed. I mean, the film was so beautiful, all chemical reactions. So as it would pass through baths of bleach, 4 baths of bleach. So as it would pass through the baths of bleach, the silver would start getting removed from the emulsion, and that, in fact, the labs used to make a killing out of selling all that silver to jewelers and all.
Ah, right,
They
right.
would collect. They would collect. The sweeper would collect.
Oh my God. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, would collect lots of that silver. That silver would be sold in the market. So we decided to retain the silver on the negative. So it was very new. So what happens in that is that it sort of takes the entire, spectrophotometry haywire. When the shadows, the blacks are blacker than black, and the whites are whiter than white. So like the two ends of the spectrum, so what they call the gamma curve goes haywire, uh, and
It messes
the
with the
image,
extremes. Yeah.
yeah, it messes with the extreme, and the image is very interesting. Like there are, so it sort of loses some of the gray tones. So you have deep blacks and bright whites on screen. So burnouts and deep shadows. So it's very interesting uh, contrast. So Sanjay Kapoor basically came up with this plan that, as Ram Charan's life starts going down a spiral, we will keep removing one bath of bleach. So every scene had been marked that, this is a 25. So there were 4 baths. So 20,
Wow.
each bath would do 25% of bleaching. So the first stage of his life was at 25% bleach bypass. So basically, the film would pass through 3 baths instead of 4. Second stage, it would pass through 2, so 50. Third stage, 75. When he is completely down in the dumps, it became 75%. And when the film ended, when he lands up in this Mauritius place, we used Fuji film. There was no bleach bypass. We shot on Fuji film. It was deep, saturated, and very pretty.
What a great
So
idea. Yeah.
yeah, so that was that. So I mean, all those things. were done at that time. We don't have a print that sort of actually tells you how amazingly this experiment was carried out.
Well,
So
I hope that this thing works out with FHF and you're able to restore this
yeah,
because definitely so many people need to see this film.
it was
Absolutely.
also one of the early. I think it was one of the first films that used something called. I mean, now Dolby is gone haywire. They do all kinds of surround sound, with digital these technologies. At that time, these were inaccessible technologies. So, Dolby had various. So you had Dolby Stereo, and you had Dolby Digital, which was like a. So you had 5.1, but
Yes.
it was 5.1. We had Dolby. It was EX. So
Yes.
EX meant that there was a surround speaker at the back. There were left and right surround speakers at the back. So we used the Dolby EX technology for this film just to create a soundscape. So there was again, this was the early. I think it was the second film, and like me, first film for Arun Ambia, the sound designer. So Arun, after that, has gone ahead to do many acclaimed films. Ranjana and Tanu Weds Manu and whatnot. Uh, but it was so Arun also. I mean, we played around a lot. You know, we used audio cassettes in the soundtrack. So when Manoj is at the in that chawl in which Saurabh and Manoj live in that basti, so there's constantly this old retro music playing, which sort of it's playing on the surround sound. It's coming from somewhere, some random corner of the sound system, and it's playing from cassettes. We played cassettes, not CDs, so that it had that dirty analog
Right. Grain. Yeah.
grain on it. And there's a lovely scene where Tabu has come to the basti to meet Manoj. This is just before that Chalpadi song. Where they have that conversation about buffaloes and cows in the village, and she talks about how quaint, how cute that village is, and Manoj says, no, it's very difficult to live there. The way, so that urban, rural, how as an urban person, how you perceive Jaunpur. You have this exoticized version of Jaunpur in your mind, like you have an exoticized version of the Jaunpur bumpkin in your head. Uh, So in that scene, when the scene ends, Manoj has sent Saurabh because she's coming. He's emptied his house of all his roommates. Gajraj is the last one to leave. He sent
Yes.
Saurabh and he told Saurabh कि जाके कुछ लेके आ जल्दी कि मैडम आ रही है. So Saurabh leaves and to get something. When she's leaving and they're waiting for Saurabh. Saurabh in the meanwhile in between, somebody has sprayed keychad on his face. And he's like anyway very pissed off. He has bought stuff, he has come back, and she's leaving, and Manoj says, "अरे मैडम का मुंह मीठा कराओ." And he says, "अरे मीठा तो नहीं लाया हूँ, वड़ा पाव लेके आया हूँ, भजिया लेके आया हूँ." So Manoj says, "अरे
Yeah.
मतलब you've got bhajia for her?" He says कि तुमने मीठा थोड़ी बोला था. So and उसमें while that is happening, पीछे there's this gabbar rap going on.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes.
And at पीछे it's playing खुद खुद कुत्ते कमीने कमीने कमीने. It's playing on the speaker. So some of these things are really cool, and way ahead of their times. So they are all. So there are elements of humor that are there in the film. I mean, I lost that humor somewhere along the line when the film failed.
No, no, I don't think it failed. Like you said, I think it was a little bit ahead of its time, and hope it gets its due credit. But Ansel, you got to tell me about two more characters from the film. Before we move on, those whole meta scenes with Mahesh Bhatt. They are funny in its own way. I mean, that's how Mahesh Bhatt is in real life. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
him
So
personally, but I can
so
tell.
Saurabh. Saurabh had written this on a character based on Mahesh Bhatt. Manoj said, I'll get my Bhatt Saab. So Manoj took me and Saurabh to meet Bhatt Saab to tell him the idea. Bhatt Saab said, okay, I'll do it. He was like very cool. And that was the first time I'd met him. Actually, now I'm very close to him now. But at that time, that was the first time I met him. He came to the shoot, and in 2 hours the shooting was done. And he called me. He said, nobody has paid me. So I said, Arey, nobody has spoken. I went to my I panicked a bit. Went to my partner. I said, he's asking for money. And I told Manoj also, I said, you got him. You should have told me that he wants money. So he came out of the van and he said, अरे तू डर गया ना? I said, हाँ. नहीं, मैं बोला किसी ने बात नहीं की आपसे? Then he said कि नहीं नहीं, I want money from this guy, from Manoj. Manoj has to pay me. I don't want your money. He's the guy making money. Tell him to pay me. So then Manoj gave him 1,000 rupees. So he took a picture of him with 1,000 rupees that Manoj gave him. And yeah, it was great fun. I mean, Bhatt Saab shot like a dream. He finished shooting in a couple of hours and one take, and he was very good, and it was him playing himself. So at that time, he was the man in the film. He was the man uh, who would perhaps become the filmmaker that I have become. Picking up stories from real life and making films out of them. And that was the character that, when I'm talking to you, I realized that, Bhatt was playing that character. He was possibly playing a spoof, not I wouldn't say a spoof, but somewhere a critical, a dark humor, black humor version of me, what I am today.
Interesting. And the other person I was going to ask you is Tito's character, Aditya Srivastav.
That is my
And,
favorite character in the film, by the way.
yeah. And another great actor who perhaps doesn't get the full credit he deserves is just a fabulous actor.
Oh my God! And that character, nobody has used Aditya Srivastav in comedy. He was, and I remember when we used to shoot also. Manoj and Saurabh also could not help laughing. There were times when we had to cut because they
He's
would
really
just,
good, yes.
yeah, they would crack up so badly in the scenes. In the middle of the scene, they would crack up. They said, "What is this guy doing? He's making us laugh so." He was hilarious, Aditya. What happens is when a film like this does not work at the box office, all the people who have worked in it, eventually, people get their due, talent gets its due, but it sort of derails the process of them doing what they are capable of doing.
Right, right. Derails and also
That,
delays to some extent, right?
yeah, it derails it. You've never seen Aditya again in this kind of a role. And which is a pity. I also feel that I have not made a film like this again. You know, I like such scripts don't happen overnight. This was inspired. It was inspired thought. It became a very inspired screenplay. That humor was very inspired. All those things just happened. It doesn't happen. I can't force it.
And Hansel, another aspect about this film that was so different, or perhaps that goes into uncharted territory, and you mentioned it when we started talking, is it touches on that symbiotic relationship between unethical broadcast television and consumer demand.
Yeah,
When Guy Tonde decides to make a quick buck by filming a killing and selling it to a television channel for sensational coverage. And like you said, now this is like, with TikTok and with social media, we increasingly see this. There was a great movie on this actually, in 2014 with Jake Gyllenhaal, The Nightcrawler. But
correct.
I thought that, this was the first Hindi film to kind of touch on that.
And it was, I think, perhaps one of the first films to touch on that so early on. With that the the news as the voyeur. Again, this was these things you don't. These are things that you feel at that time. It felt far fetched, the idea. Today, it feels childish. You want it to be more complex today. So I mean, these are. But yeah, I thought again that, as I said again, it was an inspired idea. It was just you're trying to comment on. At that time the comment was so much on betrayal, and the media, that whole device of him shooting this was more to uh, look at betrayal. You know, but the subtext, the way media has become, I mean, those things, you look back and in hindsight you realize that there was much more that he was saying than what you set out to say.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
that's what and that's what happens with most of your work. You see, whatever you do, whatever work I do, a lot of the subtext that people see years later, a lot of subtext that I am able to analyze years later, is not what you set out to say. These things, because when you explore human nature, there's a variety of things that you don't really underline, but yet uh, you are saying for posterity.
Right. And one more thing, Hansal, I wanted to ask you is I remember that year, 2000, there were two films that starred Manoj Bajpayee and Taboo. I think the other
Yeah,
film was Ghat.
Ghat,
A-
yeah.
Right. And you got a chance to work with these two great actors, much before they became huge stars that they are today. My question to you was that from a director's point of view, based on your experience, could you tell us how different or similar are their relative approaches to their craft?
Well, Tabu and I, we started talking about. She was, I edited the trailers of Marches, which was sort of Tabu's awakening. It was her film, where she sort of suddenly people discovered Tabu the actor.
Yes.
You know, so I had cut the trailers of that film. After that, there was a script that I was working on, so I approached her to act in it, and we became. I mean, she was, we were all new internet freaks. She was also on the internet. We became friends over the internet. Tabu and I, and that film did not happen. But I said, I have this idea, this script. Will you listen to it? So she did not even hear the script. She just said, "I'll do it," which was an amazing quality about Tabu. She puts that faith in you, and so I actually narrated the script to her. Not even the script, I narrated the story to her. I think 2 days after we started shooting the film, I went to her house for dinner and sat with her. I narrated the story in great detail, scenes, and she all she wanted was a sense of a character. She internalized it, and then after that, all I would do is before she had to shoot the scene, I would go to her van and read out the scene to her once. I would read out the scene to her, and that was it. I mean, it was unbelievable. After that, uh, there was no prep. I never saw her preparing, memorizing. She would come out and she would be laughing outrageously, cracking jokes, doing stuff. And the moment you say action, the character would suddenly kick in. So there's, I mean, she's a tremendous actor. I mean, and I worked with her when she was still on the path to greatness, you know. And it was a very memorable experience. And Manoj at that time, in fact, Manoj has become a lot like what she is now. A lot,
Interesting.
what Manoj has now become a lot like she was then. You know, he's far more chilled out because we did Aligarh in 2015, and it was a different Manoj. We worked, after 15 years together, and it was a different Manoj that I saw. He was far more chilled. Uh, in At that time, Manoj would uh, take the character, he would do his work on the character, and he would be in the character all day long, or for all the days that you were shooting with him. It was very difficult to separate Manoj from the character while you were shooting. So he was quite a pain actually to be with, because he was so. But it was, I mean, it used to take a toll on him mentally, physically, everything.
He's in that
He used
zone,
to be,
right?
yeah, yeah, my God, he used to be so heavily into that, and you almost found himself. I used to see him. I used to feel that he is sort of taking on too much upon himself. But yeah, as the years have passed, I think Manoj also, has altered that process. He still does a lot of work on himself, but he's altered the process to make sure that he does it with that ease comes in, the confidence, ease, so many things come in. The evolution. I've seen that. Like when I did Dilpe Matliyar and Aligarh, both of us had evolved as human beings, as artists, and we had so much more fun making Aligarh. Making a far more serious film than we had making Dilpe Matliyar.
And by the way, an absolutely fabulous film that as well. I know today we are not going to be talking about that film, but I just got to that still till day remains my favorite Manoj Bajpayee performance. Absolutely,
Mine
yeah.
too.
Right, right. Hansel, your next film was Chhal, and you have brought up the word betrayal so many times so far. And that's what Chhal essentially means. For those who haven't seen the film, I'll just say that it's a crime drama about an undercover cop, with great performances by the lead, comprising of KK Menon and Prashant Narayanan, another great actor that we haven't seen a lot since. But the story borrows a bit from In Too Deep and Donnie Brasco, I thought. But it's a film that takes its own shape.
Yeah.
And without a shadow of doubt, one of the most underrated films of the last 25 years. I mean, I love this movie. And I again watched this movie 2 days ago for this podcast. And it still holds up really well. It's pretty gripping. The tender moments are really something that's different. And I wanted to talk with you about that as well. But can you tell us the germ of Chhal and how that movie came together?
Chal was actually born out of, I was going through a very depressed kind of phase in my life because Dilpe Matliyar had not worked, and it sort of, financially I was in a very bad shape because I'd lost money on Dilpe Matliyar. There was debt on my head. Personally, also life wasn't going too well. I also had sort of hit the bottle with a vengeance. While I was doing Dilpe Matliyar, there was this film critic who had come to my house to do a chat for rediff.com with Manoj Bajpayee, Supan Verma. So Supan and I got chatting after the conversation he had with Manoj, the online chat that he did. Manoj left. Supan and I started chatting. We became friends. I sent him an email one day. I said, Supan, are you interested in becoming a writer? He said, how did you know? And that's how our friendship began. And he started sending me ideas. He would send me, like, Supan is a hyperactive mind. His email ID is also hyperactive. So he would send me 3344 synopsis every day of story ideas. Idea after idea he would send me, and nothing would click. I mean, I was also in that state of mind where I did not really know what I was going to do next, how I would make a film if I did. So there was this producer. He's super had written a film called Shadi.com, and there was a producer from Nasik called Nitin Patil who wanted to produce it. We tried to make that film. I mean, we had cast Saif Ali Khan in it. This is before Dil Chahta Hai. So I had gone to meet Saif. It was an interesting film, very urban rom com with Saif. Much before Saif became the poster boy of the rom com genre. We went to meet Saif, but things did not work out. So we tried to make Shadi.com for Nitin Patil, and unfortunately, Shadi.com never took off because things did not work out with Saif. We struggled to find other actors. I went to R. Madhavan, who had just shot Allai Payute with Mani Ratnam. I went to meet Akshay Khanna, not realizing that he would also be part of Dil Chahta Hai later. You know, so I met a lot of actors. The film didn't work out, and then one fine day, I mean, I was in a drunken stupor. I went out to sleep. I got up in the morning. There were all these synopses lying around, and one of my assistants was there with me. He said, "Have you read this synopsis?" I read it. I said, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, isn't this an interesting film? Will be a cool thriller to make." So I read it again. I said, "Yeah, this should be cool." I said, "Producer एक ही है. Let me ask Nitin Patil if he'll make this instead of that one." He's the polar opposite of the rom-com. So I called Nitin Patil used to live in Nasik. So I said, drive down. I want to give you a proposal. So he drove down. I narrated the idea to him. I took Supan. We narrated the idea to him. He immediately bought it. He said, let's make this. You know, uh, Unknown to me. I mean, I had not seen Donnie Brasco. Okay, I had not seen Into the Deep. I've still not seen it. I hadn't seen that. So that's the reason you feel when you see the film that the film takes a life of its own because I had no reference.
Right.
Supan perhaps did. Supan was a film buff. He used to watch films day and night, and consciously, unconsciously, these influences, creep into your work when you watch so much. He had the largest collection of pirated uh, films that I've ever seen. So he would have everything that you name it, and Supan would have it. You know. So I suspect he had seen it, and he denies it. He says, "No, I this is not based on that. I wrote it before that. Some warped timeline. He will keep giving you." But uh, yeah, he he wrote. I mean, Supan wrote the screenplay. I told him to get onto the screenplay. Supan, being this the hyperactive person he wrote the screenplay in a week. And yeah, I mean, again, in that, the question was, who do we cast? So one or two people we went to meet unsuccessfully. One of them was Uday Chopra to play the character that Prashant Narayan played.
Okay.
We went to meet him for the character, and Uday he was really nice, very polite. He took the script, he read it, and he uh, uh, called me again to meet him. I went to his house, and he said, I'm doing another film where there's a similar character. So I had to choose between the two. I've chosen that. So he did a film called Supari.
I remember, yes.
Yeah. So he chose to do that. It's a different matter that we started. Supari started before we started Chhal, and it released when I made Woodstock Villa. It took years to complete. So yeah, we went to him. I mean, he was very, very professional and very polite with us, and he politely declined to do the film. And so we were at a restaurant, and I said, the in the restaurant, Prashant Narayanan was hanging out, and so he just walked up to me and looked at me, and it's a very typical Prashant Narayanan behavior. And he looked at me and said, "कि मेरे साथ तो काम करोगे ही नहीं ना?" So on an instinct, I turned down and said कि कल स्क्रिप्ट भेजता हूँ, तू पढ़ ले, बताता हूँ, फिर बताना मुझे. So and that was रात गई बात गई. He forgot about it, and I sent the script to him, and he called me. He says, "Ki, you want me to play this?" I said, "Yeah." Then, I really don't believe it. He says, yeah, I want you to play this. So Prashant was also very overjoyed that I actually thought of him, but it was at that moment that I thought it was a very instinctive call. I knew him. I knew Prashant from before. Very good actor, slightly uh, crazy also, crazy guy. Uh, Known to be difficult, but with me, I never found him difficult to work with. We had done a TV pilot together also. Uh, I mean, Prashant, and before Prashant,
Which
there
TV
was
show was that, Hansal?
it was a pilot only. It did not go beyond the pilot. It was called Gumnam. It was based on Agatha Christie's The Mousetrap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was done for Doordarshan. It never got passed by the Babus. Uh, so uh, so yeah, I mean, and before that, the point was who will play the cop, who will play the main protagonist, you know, and who is in that dilemma. So there, I was very clear. I told the producer I want this actor called KK. KK had shot for Panch before that. But before Panch, again, KK had done TV with me. He had done two shows with me. You know, there was a show called Crime Time. Again, it was a pilot. So Crime Time was perhaps the first time KK actually faced the camera. It was done in 95, 96. So I found KK at a play that Makantip Deshpande had directed. Through that play, uh, you know, I found KK. I thought KK was a phenomenal actor and he had a great presence. So then I made a show which was loosely inspired by Cain and Abel, Jeffrey Archer novel called Laksh. KK played Abel uh, in that. You know, Sachin Khedekar played Cain. And again, that show sort of got cut short uh, in its run. You know, because it did not fit into the format of popular TV. So yeah, so. Uh, But I always liked Kiki. I thought he had that material. And then I had seen Panch. I had seen Panch. He was phenomenal in that. I think he had also shot for Bhopal Express for Mahesh Mathai.
Oh, yes. Great film.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. He had shot for Bhopal Express around that time. So he had done a few films, but I saw in KK this possibility of having an Indian Chow Yun Fat, you know, that you take an actor like KK, a good actor, a fantastic actor, and make him into this action hero, you know, intense actor, but who does this deadly action, you know. So it was like a John Woo. I wanted to make a very Hong Kong style, John Woo style.
The
Uh,
action is like that from Chhal. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, thriller. So a lot of the action, I mean, is very John Woo inspired. So you'll see birds. So lots of John Woo homage
Yes,
moments. You know,
yes.
you'll see birds. You'll see fish.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so
The
we
slide down
blasted
the
a fish
stairs and
tank,
all. Yeah.
and that slide down the stairs. The slide down the stairs is in fact done exactly the way it was done. Like I just saw an interview of Chavyun Fat describing, you know, how he was on a slide. He went sliding down the steps,
Yes,
and
yes.
somebody was pulling him. So we did exactly that. So that Chhal had action by Sham Kaushal. You know, so who
Vicky's
was in
dad, right?
hibernation? Yeah, Vicky's dad. I mean, now he's Vicky's dad, but Sham Kaushal is perhaps the one of the biggest action directors of the country.
Oh,
He's done
yes,
some of the
yes.
biggest films the country's had, and one of the most educated action directors we've had. You know, he's a MA with English literature, which is very unusual for an action director. So Shamji was in hibernation at that time. He had done Nana Patekar's film Prahar, and then he had done Fiza, but very little work. So, you know, the requirement in this film was that we had these new actors. We had KK, we had Prashant Narayanan, and we had all this. tremendous action, but we had to do the film within a tight budget. It had to be made on a budget of 90 lakhs. So it was an attempt to build that alternative genre of action film. You know, Again, if it had succeeded, I would have made more and more. Chhal would have become a franchise with KK as the hero. I It could have very easily become a Mission Impossible kind of uh, franchise, or a Infernal Affairs kind of franchise. It's also, I mean, the film is a lot like Infernal Affairs also. Uh, Infernal Affairs, Departed. It it could very well be an Indian version of Infernal Affairs. When people used to say that we are adapting Departed into Hindi, I said, well, I think Supan did that already for me. I'm proud of the film because what it allowed me to do. You see, I could not do that in Chhal, in Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar. What I wanted to do through this film was sort of show off my command over technique, that I could make a film in the slickest way possible at a very low cost. As a filmmaker, I wanted to prove that. Because Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar, the things were very layered. They were under the surface. You could not really, you could not, what do you say, see a lot. It was not very apparent. So here I wanted to make it very apparent. The action, the camera work. So again, here there's an interesting style, camera style that I've used in Chal. So this was shot by a cinematographer called Nilab Kaul. This is again Nilab's first film, the FTI graduate, and really, really good director of photography. So what we decided is that all the present. So this film goes between past and present. So the present is shot with this opal filter in front of the lens. It's a slightly warmish kind of filter, and the camera is always Dutch. It's never straight. So that Dutch angle was a thing. It was a representation of the life that KK was leading at that time. Always, it was never balanced. He was trying to balance between the right and the wrong. So the camera angle sort of was meant to represent his current state. And the flashbacks were shot straight, when he's appointed, when he becomes. So all those flashbacks were shot straight, and we used the bleach bypass process again there. So they were like completely washed out, and they were very stylized. The windows were sort of bursting with light. So again, we tried to do them as interestingly as possible. But yeah, I mean that camera, that style, they had a lot of attitude. And again, remember, there was no digital technology available to us except for editing. The Avid was being used for editing, so we cut the film on the Avid. But ultimately, the film that comes out has to be finally a negative. So the negative has to be cut. If dissolves have to be done, they have to be done optically, which is in the lab. The smallest dissolve, fade outs, fade ins, everything has to be done optically, which means you're running the risk of degrading the going generations down in the image.
Right.
Uh,
You're running that
so
risk. Yeah.
you're running that risk. You're running the risk of also damaging the negative, getting pinholes on the negative. So it all has to be, the negative has to be cut, joined. So all those sharp cuts in the film and all, it's easier. So the guy who cut the negative, his name was Jolly. So Jolly sir, when he saw, he said, "So what kind of film you guys edit all this Avid and all, and you just keep cutting? How many cuts do you have in this film?" So in the early days when they used to cut on the Steenbeck, they wouldn't do these kind of small cuts. One frame, two frame cuts. So on the Avid, suddenly people became trigger happy. It became a style in the film. Where we did these small cuts. Like there was a crane shot in which we cut every alternate frame. So it was a one single frame cut. So that guy lost it. He says, how can I do this? Because negative has to be cut. You remove one frame, join to the next frame. So it has to. So they were the film had, I believe the film had approximately 2000 plus cuts.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was he he lost it initially at us, but when he saw the film, he said, "Wow, this is interesting that you can do this." मेरे से बहुत मेहनत करवाई आप लोगों ने, but interesting है ये. So again, the film's soundtrack. That film's soundtrack was an absolute kicker.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Vijusha, right?
Vijusha, yeah, it was. Again, this was the producer's suggestion to use Vijusha. I actually had taken this duo called Jeet and Preetham to meet the producer. They played many tracks, including the tune of the Dhoom, what became the Dhoom track,
Very
title track.
interesting. Okay. Great. That's a great
So
anecdote. Yeah.
they played that, saying this could be the theme. Because by then, till until then, Dhoom had not happened. They were still struggling, Jeet and Preetham. So they played that, and I kept convincing the producer, take them. These guys are damn good. But he said, no, I know Viju. And of course, Viju Shah is a cult figure. So I said, okay. I met Viju Bhai and we got along really well. And I mean, his sound was something else. He gave the film some really whacked out sound. The songs were tremendous. Again, a great album. I mean, the title track was fantastic.
And my favorite is that romantic track.
Chupchap.
Yes,
Chupchap
Chup
karti
Chap.
hai baatein.
Chup Chap. And I wanted to ask
So
you,
this
Hansal,
is
about that scene that just before that song, when KK and Jasil, they meet in the hair salon where she's working. That's such a
right.
sweet and real scene. It
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
so tender and so real for that time.
It's a very, I mean, that scene, uh, I think it's a marvel of editing because
So Apurva
uh,
Rani gets the credit.
yeah. I mean, a lot of this film is the way Apurva cut the film. So a lot of the scenes have been reconstructed on the editing table. They wouldn't necessarily work if they were put straight in a straightforward manner. The film was not shot that way. Also, it was meant to be cut that way. But Apurva got that. He got that the film needed that kind of attitude, and he cut it in that manner. Uh, you know, almost music video-ish kind of. Uh,
Absolutely. Right, right, right. And
so
that makes
the
sense
whole
because he
treatment.
had made that music video and he
Yeah.
had that kind
So
of
the
sensibility.
treatment was very music video like. It was like a longish music video. That's why and there was this constant bed of music. The scenes almost felt like they were cut to music. Uh, you know, so that scene also, while we were shooting it, we were not sure about how it would pan out. We shot it, and then I think in the edit it shaped up well. The music added to it. We had recorded the songs already, so the music when we put it there, the music really that the whole piano intro piece of Chup Chap, it really worked well. The sad part of all this music, I must tell you, is that the music is with Z Music, and those guys never mastered the music properly. They tried to save some 10,000 rupees on the mastering, and they mastered it and released those CDs, and there's no master left. We don't have any copy of the actual master. The CDs are terribly mastered, and except on the original film, we don't have a proper soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like it's a very distorted soundtrack. If you listen to it, the voices, everything, they sort of tampered with the levels, with the stereo levels. I have always asked Viju Bhai if he has a copy, whether I can at least make something out of that copy. But he also doesn't. He doesn't have a record of the soundtrack. It was very careless work by Z. I actually complained to their management about it, but nobody bothered.
That's sad. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, how some of these biggest companies that are in the business, I don't want to say they lack on the vision or something, but they really don't think about posterity or about preserving and all this.
Because if you really had that much foresight, if you had that much love for the art, you wouldn't be working in a company. It's unfortunate
Yeah,
that these it's that there is a contradiction in the love for art and the business of cinema,
yeah,
and that there's always that battle. So for them, Chhal was just I mean they took the music uh, for no money. They just they just promised an X amount of promotion against the. So for us, giving the music to them meant that the certain amount of free promotion on ZTV would happen. It was like a barter deal. So they were very careless about even the mastering. They didn't really care. While I mean, and the film had such some really great tracks. The title track. If you look at the title sequence, for example, in the film, where the opening credits arrive. So another piece of trivia I must give you. So the team that designed that title sequence, one of the persons in that team was Rahi Anil Barve.
oh my God, wow.
Yeah. So he used to work as an animator for Maya, the company that Ketan Mehta had formed. So Maya did some of the visual effects in this film, and they designed the entire title sequence. So there was a team of 3 to 4 people. Rahi was a part of that team, and I mean the other people was Shwetab Verma, who's now a ad filmmaker and quite a big guy in advertising. He was there. There's a guy called Priyam. All boys from NID, designers, really smart artists who made that title sequence out of nothing. We had no money. They made the title sequence for some, I think, 50,000 rupees. So, when I always tell people, I say, look at the title sequence, it stands the test of time. Good good work does not necessarily need too much of money.
Hansel, we got to talk about a few more scenes. How are we doing on the time, by the way? I know it's pretty late there, so
I'm okay. I'm
you're
okay.
okay.
You got me hooked.
I'm so glad. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Hansel, I want to talk about two scenes in particular from Chhal. One is the absolutely smashing opening sequence, where Apurva is watching that movie. Obviously, the movie that's playing is Dil Pe Mat Le Yaar.
Yeah.
And then
That's the only movie. That's the only movie I had rights for, and that I had a print for.
that you could show, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And these two people are secretly kind of tailing him, and he goes to the loo. These two people follow him, and then obviously Prashant Narayanan roughs him up in the loo, and then he kind of intimidates him by asking him, "क्या picture देख रहा है? कौन है hero कौन है?" And he screams Bhiku, Bhiku, because he's talking about Manoj Bajpayee, of course. But
yeah.
that's again, how large does Satya like loom? Even today, I mean, it looms large. But I can only imagine at that time, it must be like, because Satya was as good as new at that
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
maybe
I mean,
5 years.
it was a boon. Satya was a boon as well as a burden.
Yes, yes, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Ram Gopal Verma himself, his legacy was that not only of being the man who sort of changed a lot of things, who actually allowed us to imagine more freely, but at the same time, his legacy was one of burden. You were burdened by his legacy. So I remember when Chhal was released, one of the reviews in Times of India compared the film with Company for some reason and said that it lacks the audacity of Company. And I had no idea what that meant, what that fucking English meant. You pardon my French. You know, he said it lacks the audacity of Company. And I thought Chhal was far more audacious. But that was the burden of Ram Gopal Verma. That you make a film that has a theme of gangsterism, it is compared to a Ram Gopal Verma film. And that was the curse of that. The early that between 1998, since Satya came out, and till until Sarkar, almost until Sarkar, it was a curse on anybody else who attempted that genre. It was as if Ramu owned that genre, So it was really, it was a tough act to live up to, and you always knew that you were going to wait. It also, I mean, it was also a measure of the mediocrity of those who were reviewing those films. You know, the people who were reviewing were as mediocre as they are today. So I found that a very unfair comparison. Look at the film for what it is. Why and how does company come into this? Company has nothing to do with Chhal. Chhal is a very imaginary. It's almost like a gangster fantasy film. And it's like supremely audacious. If you are questioning the audacity of the film, it's very audacious. To cast K.K. Menon, Prashant Narayanan, to have Sri Vallabh Vyas, who in Lagan plays Gracie Singh's father, as the main villain. You know, to have all these other unknown actors, Naved Aslam, who plays a cop
Yeah,
in the film,
another
who's
fantastic
phenomenal in
actor.
the film,
Yeah.
fantastic actors. So Naved, all these people, to have them in the film, isn't that audacious? To have Jaya Seal as the main lead, she's an NSD actor. To have music by Viju Shah, who was sort of forgotten because of the onslaught of Sandeep Chauta. A.R. Rahman, Sandeep Chauta. There was that. They create a subgenre of music, which was the Ramu. Heavy rhythm background. So in that, Viju Shah comes in. So I mean, we did something. We attempted. We were very audacious. We also, we did not have the budget to pay that time. Dolby used to charge us license fees. We did not have the budget to pay for the license, and
And they must be exorbitant, right? I can imagine. Yeah.
exorbitant, man. I mean, relatively, it was 3 lakhs, the license fees. But more than 3 lakhs, also Dolby put limitations on how much you could push your rhythm. So in the film, if you watch the film in the theater, your seats literally vibrate. I wanted the experience to be that. So when all the bullets were passed through the subwoofer. So when the bullet would burst, even the music, all the low ends of the music would all go through the subwoofer. We pushed the subwoofer to the limit. We pushed all the levels up to the limit. You know, the film was like a full sensory experience. And Dolby sets all these very sanitized limits for how much you can cross. And at that time, the code used to be embedded on the film negative.
Yeah, I forgot
There'd
you
be
have a coding background as well. Yes.
yeah. So it would be a decoder, encoder. So they were very that it one the technology was very unwieldy, and it was also there were limitations. So the mastering and all, they put a lot of limitations on you. So we decided to go with DTS, which was an alternative format, which basically connected through time code on your film negative to a disc, to a disc which held the sound, a digital, like a CD kind of disc, which held the sound. Uh, and so there you had little more leeway to push the music. So we did that, and DTS came to us free. DTS said, we will do it free for you. I said, yeah, that is fine. You do it free, but theaters don't have DTS. So DTS actually saw our sound, and they loved the sound so much that they went and installed DTS, drives in theater. They calibrated those theaters and installed DTS drives in nearly 100 theaters across the country.
Which theaters in Mumbai did they do this? Do you remember?
Well, lot of theaters. A lot of theaters,
Okay.
including Shan. There was Shan Cinema. That then there was a theater called Central Plaza. So Central Plaza was our main theater actually. So see, this is again the thing. We were also plagued by the terrible distribution system. The film was distributed by a Mumbai-based distributor, but the exhibitors refused to take the film, saying, "कि ये तो who are these people? They are TV actors." So we did not have a big choice of theaters at that time. Uh, Fame Ad Labs was the only multiplex we had, and Fame Ad Labs did not take the film because a film called Encounter had released on the same day as Chhal. That was produced by the owners of Fame Ad Lab, Shringar Films. So they had produced and distributed that film. It had Nasiruddin Shah. It was a decent film, but because they wanted their film to have a free run, so they had multiplexes in Mumbai, in Pune, and uh, they did not let me. They did not give a single show to my films. So we were hoping that those theaters would have that terrific sound, but they did not. So my film released primarily in single screens, and many of them were B and C center screens. But it did pretty well. I mean, it did above average for the time, for the kind of release that it had. But they did go and install. I mean, these Central Plaza. I remember the experience of watching the film at Central Plaza was quite something. Because it was fully calibrated, very well uh, done. And again, Arun Nambiar had done the sound, and there was a mixing engineer called Leslie. Leslie D'Souza, I think, yeah. So after that, I mean, he did Devdas for Sanjay Leela Bhansali. So this was Leslie's first film as a independent re-recording engineer.
Hansel, let's talk about that scene from Chhal where Girish kind of meets his final fate. It's shocking and unexpected. It's only then that we kind of realize as an audience, how big of a betrayal this is for Girish. Can you talk more about that particular scene and the way you directed that scene and what went into making of that sequence?
That sequence was very organic. We chose this location on the outskirts of Mumbai at a place called Godbandar. So Godbandar now, of course, is full of Lodha buildings, Lodha towers. But at that time, Godbandar was like just a lot of empty spaces. So there was this. It was a quarry-like space there. Where there were mounds of stone that were kept, and we got it really cheap to shoot in. And just opposite was also the creek, where there's a scene where KK and Prashant are standing by a boat.
Yes.
So it was right opposite that. It was on Godbandar Road, so it was on the Thane Creek. So I got these beautiful locations to shoot in. I got that and this place. So this sequence was actually shot. My so Nilab said that he wanted to shoot this at a particular time. It was for me it was a bit of a complicated scene because it was going from one emotion to the other, and it was written as one sequence, as one scene. So it started at one point and it ended the way it did. you know but I did not feel that such a big thing could have happened in one go. So I broke it down. I shot portions of the scene at different times of the day, at different locations. So I would shoot the one scene, one part of the scene up to one point, and then say, okay, let's move for the next part here. So it's broken down, if I remember right now, into 4 or 5 parts. So by the time the last bit happens, where Girish, feels that full betrayal, and he shoots himself in the head. Now that was That was done absolutely, at Magica, just after the sun had set. So we shot it at that time, and we had very little time. And now this is again what not having budget does to you. That there was no money for prosthetics or for a wound to come into his head. There was the makeup guy had come with something. I said this is not going to work. How do I get this bullet effect and all? It was like all too complicated to do at that time. Now with VFX you can easily do it. So it was too complicated to do. So just it was a very quick thing that let everything happen on KK's face, not on Prashant's face. So he shoots him the tongue. The pressure. KK has shut his eyes. Prashant has pinned him down. So if the camera is on KK's face, and the final confrontation has taken place, where Girish is asking him that why did you do this to me? And KK has shut his eyes. He's put the gun is on his head, and KK is ready to be blown. And then suddenly there's this gunshot, and you see the blood splashing on
There is a splatter. Yeah.
KK's
Right.
splatter. And and then you cut to this beautiful sunset shot with his dead body, and KK screams. So I mean, I think it was organic. It had just one thing led to the other, and of course, you had such phenomenal actors that there was no retakes, nothing. You just kept going for it. There was a lot of improvisation in the scene, a lot of improvisation. They improvised a lot, and I think
And
it
the
was one.
camaraderie between the two actors, it kind of
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
through,
yeah,
I think. I think they must have had a
yeah, yeah.
ball on the sets too.
Well,
Or did
not
they
that
have
much of
issues?
a ball. No, not issues really, but KK generally keeps to himself. It does not, with me. I mean, him and me got along very well. We still, I mean, KK and me have remained. He so many years later, I just gave him a call, asked him to do this small part in Shahid for me. He never asked a single question. He just came and did it. So he's always been this phenomenal person in my life, KK. And yeah, but yeah, they did not really. I mean, they know each other well. They did, I think they did another film together later also. But they kept to themselves. They had done theater together. They were regular Prithvi theater people, so they knew each other well, but not exactly best of friends.
Okay.
So one more trivia I must tell you. The
Yes.
person I had offered Chhal to first after Uday Chopra was Irfan Khan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Irfan, this is much before Irfan did Hasil or anything.
And this is
They
for
liked
which Girish, or this is
for Girish, for
for
Girish,
Girish? Okay.
for Girish, for Girish. And Irfan even said yes to it. Irfan had said yes, he was very interested in it. And then my producer did not want him. So after that, everybody regretted it. But yeah, I mean, I have no regrets. I think Prashant gave it a little bit of boyishness that KK that Irfan might not have. And both Irfan and KK physically would have looked very similar. So
Yeah.
whatever happens is for the better. I also, by the way, offered the role to Atul Kulkarni. Yeah, but Atul felt, I don't know what Atul felt, but he said no for the part at that time. I don't remember. I still take his case for that.
No, I think Prashant Narayan, the way he brought that impetus side to Girish,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really
and
like
the
that.
energy. So
Yeah.
they actually, the balance was very good. KK had this very restrained, very stoic, and very strong personality. And quiet personality. And Prashant had the counter energetic, very. He provided the counter energy to KK. That balance was very very good.
And Hansel, after Chhal, you did a movie that I know you have mentioned that you're not too fond of. It was a sex comedy called Ye Kya Ho Raha Hai, which
Yeah.
actually I remember watching it then and really liking it. So,
No, a lot of people. I mean, Rajkumar Rao, when he met me first, I asked him if he'd seen any of my earlier work. He says, of course. He says, I saw Ye Kya Ho Raha Hai, and I was a fan of you since then. I said, hello. I mean, I don't know if I should be meeting you, but no. But Ye Kya Ho Raha Hai, see, it. I think it achieved what it set out to do. I just felt what I regret about Ye Kya Ho Raha Hai is that it could have been an unabashedly funny sex comedy. It could have been really hilarious. We succumbed to unnecessary drama in the film. We made it unnecessarily melodramatic and soapy, and which is what I don't like about the film. It
wait,
should have
what do
been
you mean? So you said so? Are you saying that you guys kind of deliberately dumbed it down?
not dumbed it down. We made it very, very melodramatic. A lot of unnecessarily emotional. So the film initially was just a funny film. It was very stupid, very funny, and we enjoyed it. I mean, the first cut we had fun, but my producer watched the cut and he felt the film lacked any kind of emotion, and it was debatable. I mean, I said, why do we need emotion? So we went for we drank a lot of whiskey together. My which is Harry Baveja, Harman's father. Uh, so Harry G, me, and Supan. Supan wrote that also. Three of us went, drank a lot, and then we ended up agreeing that okay, we'll add drama now. So we actually rewrote some scenes. We reshot. I think around 7 8 days of reshoot was done, and I think that was the big feeling of the film. In hindsight, when I see that a film like that should not take itself too seriously.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, I mean,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't disown any of my films. I made the film, and good, bad, ugly, it's me. And I will die with it, its uh, with its terribleness. I mean, I made many more terrible films after that. So Ye Kya Ho Raha Hai doesn't sit at the top of those.
And Hansel, now you're working with Karina, correct? Is What can you tell us about that? Can you talk about that, or at least tell us what genre that project is?
I cannot, Himanshu,
Okay,
not at this stage.
no, no
I've
worries.
just I've just come from a meeting on that film.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
So it is a film, though. It's
from
not a show.
No, it's a feature film, and it's a just come from a marketing strategy meeting. And if I talk right now, they will murder me.
That's fine. No worries. No worries. We'll move on. Hansel, can you talk about your collaboration with Netflix and tell us like what you guys are planning on doing there?
It's again, it's something that I mean, it's there's a lot of it is it's a commitment between us to work together. It is as simple as that. So there are contours to the deal. There are conditions. There are preconditions, and which are commercial, basically commercial terms. But essentially, for me as an artist, it means that they want me to do more work for them.
It's good. Yeah,
And yeah, and that's about it. I found some sort of success in the long format, and I'm enjoying that.
for sure. Yes.
I'm enjoying telling stories in the long format, and I want to continue doing that.
Okay. So does that mean you will be doing more long format than feature films?
Well, I always I'm guided by the script. I start working on a script, and if the script excites me, I say I want to direct it. If it doesn't, I don't. It ends up that way. There have been films that I've signed which I've opted out of, even in the recent future, in the recent past. So it depends on what it does to me once it is ready. So it doesn't matter whether it's long form, it's feature. I mean, films is what has got me here, and they are, mm, you know, they will remain my. I don't know about first love. Yeah, yeah, they are like first love because that's where it all began. So that love will always remain.
And I got to ask you this. You've been making movies for more than 2 decades now, right? How
Yeah,
in the world have you not made a film around food?
yeah. It's a tough ask. It's too much pressure. It's too much pressure on myself. Which is, there are two questions that people ask me. How come you've not made a film about food, and how come you haven't opened a restaurant? And I said, because I don't want to lose the joy that I get out of making food. I don't want to lose the joy that food gives me by making it mechanical.
Right.
Because food cannot be an object for me. Uh, a film about food has to be much more. It has to be about those characters. So, like when I watched this show, The Bear, I mean, I I have never been more envious in my life. I'm usually very graceful about other people's work, but The Bear made me very envious. I felt, you know, what the fuck, why am
Great show.
I?
Yeah.
Yeah, why could I not have made something like this? So every time I see a piece of work like that, I do feel that tinge of anger. And yeah, but I think I will, the long form might allow me that possibility, to tell a story. The bear has also triggered that, but I don't want to react to that instantly. Otherwise, I might end up aping the bear.
Right. Right. Finally, Ansel, we are going to play a fun round of a game I call Shoot. It's essentially a rapid
Okay,
fire game, where I'm going to
okay,
ask you questions and you are going to give me quick fire answers. So it could
okay,
be, if it's a name, it has to be only one name. If it's a choice, you have to pick only one. Ready?
okay.
A deceased actor or actress you wish you had a chance to work with.
Balratsani,
An actor or actress you would like to work with.
Ranbir Kapoor,
Oh, wow. Favorite Satyajit Ray film.
Jalsagar.
Favorite Sai Paranspe film.
Wow, that's a tough one. You know, there's so many, but you know, I want to name a film that people haven't seen, which was a film called Disha,
Yes, yes,
and I thought it was a very powerful film,
yes, yes.
and very few people saw.
All right, Disha. Favorite Mahesh Bhatt film.
Again, tough one, but definitely Saransh.
Saransh, okay. You haven't worked with Anupam Kher, have you?
Let's not talk about that.
Okay. Okay, okay. A film of yours which deserved more love, in your opinion.
Dil pe mat le yaar.
One director whose films you eagerly await.
There's no one, but
Anyone. Yeah.
but definitely Asghar Farhadi.
Okay, Farhadi. Yes. One thing you absolutely cannot stand about Hindi cinema.
I cannot stand.
Yes, that pisses you
Uh,
off.
Actually, nothing. It's given me a lot.
Okay. And one thing you absolutely adore about Hindi cinema.
The same thing that it's given me a lot.
Gun to your head, cooking or filmmaking?
Cooking.
Oh wow, I'm really surprised you didn't even take a second.
No,
That's your first
yes,
love,
always.
right? Well, Hansal, thank you so much. I really appreciate you staying up so late and answering all my questions. So I really enjoyed this, and I'm so glad that we finally got a chance to connect and talk about these two great films. And I really, really hope that these are restored, and now that you have told me how much thought went into them technically as well, I mean, we got to watch these on the big screen, so it's not just a streaming platform. But
I hope your podcast brings people's attention towards
yes,
those aspects, and that we are able to do this, we are able to achieve this. And I've been telling the producers who don't realize that negative is finally physical material. It
right,
deteriorates.
right. Yeah, I just recently, saw I think Atul Sabharwal and Shivender. They have been talking with some studios and thing about this in going forward. So I think that there is some work they're doing
No,
there.
no, Shivi is somebody I know really well, Shivendra, and we talk about it. He in fact told me, he says, let's do this, and I'm also willing to spend money on it, on restoration, but I unfortunately don't own the rights to those films. You see,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the tragedy of being a director in India is that you're only a director. You're a person on hire, and you have no rights on any of your works.
that
You
is
know,
sad. Yeah, you
today
got to own
today the
masters. Yeah,
today today copyright laws protect writers. They recognize writers as authors, but directors are not authors. And I mean and we don't even fight for it. So which I find that a bit
that is
demeaning
crazy though, right? I mean,
to the
it's
kind of, yeah, it's very sad for the kind of work that we do. uh, I think it is unfair not to give us any part of the authorship of the film.
but how are filmmakers okay with that? I mean,
Well, you can see, uh, the strike that is going on in the US.
yes, yes,
Uh, the only union that is not a part of it is the DGA. Similarly, in India also we have a directors union which is barely, uh, looking at directors as authors. We are not. We
strange.
are
Yeah.
not focused. We are not. We are not focused on that. We don't have that kind of. We ourselves are. We are so focused on survival and making that next film, running our homes, keeping our relationships with studios alive, that we forget that we are artists at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I don't blame people, because that's what the first thing they got to do. So, but yeah, in the long term, this doesn't bode well, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, Hansal, so thanks a lot again. If you liked the episode, do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content like this. You can find the link for supporting the show in the show notes and on the pod website. Also, do share this episode on Twitter, Insta, or Facebook. And do subscribe, rate, and review the pod wherever you listen to your pods. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at loveofcinemasf8. Feel free to reach out there or by email with your comments, feedback, and suggestions. You can find my email in the show notes. That's the episode. This is Himanshu signing off. And as always, thank you for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.